Every Tuesday and every Thursday, we have groups come out. Veterans come and handle the birds. They go for walks around our park, and it's good for them because it's almost a calming effect with the birds. They reflect immediately, which maybe why she's so fidgety, but they pick up on what you're feeling, so it almost is a subconscious effort to calm yourself down. And okay, it's good for the birds because the stimulation or their enrichment comes from visual stimulation. So every day we get them out, take them for walks, we do different events, and it's good for the birds, good for the people. And if you ever wonder what a kestrel sounds like, that's what they sound like. There are a few that I've seen around USF, mostly fighting the reflections in the windows of the ISA building later in the evening. But they are the smallest falcon in North America, and they are actually one of the few species that actually displays sexual dimorphism in the color of the feathers. So she's got a nice modeling on her back, mostly because she's the one that'd be taking care of the nest when she has eggs or babies. And her male counterpart has a creamier chest with maybe a little bit of dappling. There's a nice book that circa 1949 left out there, Falcons of the World, and you can kind of see the difference. I didn't bring the male with us because it was just me, and I wasn't sure exactly how that would go. But some interesting facts about the kestrel. They are actually able to hover in place when they're spotting their prey. They vary their diet throughout the year. Mostly they like insects, grasshoppers, dragonflies. But in the wintertime, since those bugs aren't around, they'll go for mammals. But of course, that's depending on location. What else? They do have a specialized beak. She broke hers recently because it cracked somehow, even though we did some maintenance and whatnot. But they have a toenail tooth, which is right toward where it would curve downward. But they use that when they catch their prey to sever the spine, so whatever it is they've caught can't get away. And she's very vocal. I'm going to switch it up in just a sec and bring out our next bird. Oh, yeah, that's... She's with us because somebody thought that they could try and make a pet out of her. Unfortunately, you need to have special licensing. Either you need to be a falconer or rehab, or it's a lot of work. You have to have a minimum of 250 hours working with these birds in order to actually have them in your possession. And they are not easy work. People think, oh, it looks like a cockatiel. No. Now, they have very special needs. You have to keep up with them. You know, it's not as intuitive as people would like to think. Her male counterpart was hit by a vehicle, and he has a cataract in one eye. But they're about the same age. But we've tried putting them in together because if we can have two of the same species in the same area, the more the better. That frees up room for us. But she does not want anything to do with them at the end of the day. They can stand on the perch next to each other all day long, but the second you try and make them roommates, forget it. And it's not just her that instigates everything, even though she's sassy. And this is G. He was originally only supposed to be with us for a short period of time, and he was given the nickname Guest. He became a permanent member, and they didn't really have anything creative to come up with, so they just shortened it to G. But it's fitting for him. I think he has the longest legs of any hawk I've seen. He is a red-shoulder hawk. He's a little bit smaller than his distant cousin, the red-tail hawk. Biggest difference between the two is size, and he also has striping on his tail. And if I can get him to turn the right way, you can see he was hit by a vehicle, and his head's kind of caved in on the side. The eye is actually still in the socket, but there's no reason to try and remove it, so they just let it be. We have to clean it out every so often. He shares the habitat with the barred owl, which I have to go back and check my facts. One of the volunteers told me this, and I've seen plenty of red-shouldered hawks, but I've never seen a barred owl in my neighborhood. But he is the one that has the, how do I describe it? The Blue Jays have really mastered the song. He has that Kia, Kia, Kia song, and sometimes when I'm trying to get him out for events, he'll sing it to me very loudly in my ear as he's flying to the other side of the habitat. These guys will take care of your pigeons, your doves, squirrels. They're pretty darn smart, pretty darn agile. And what else can I say about you? Give me that look. I can pause for a second while I try and think of things. Anybody have any questions so far? The difference between the red shoulder and the red tail, the red shoulders are smaller. They have more striping on their feathers. Their tail feathers have more striping, whereas the red tails are more solid, where they've got the rusty red solid tail. But he is significantly smaller than his female counterpart, where we do have a female at our park, which unfortunately escaped us for 6 weeks last summer. And now she's back, and she realized the grass ain't so green on the other side. And so we have no problem feeding her, where it used to be you couldn't look at her while she was trying to eat her food, and she would just freeze up. Yep, and that's true for most of the birds of prey, is that the female is always going to be a bit larger than the male, since they're the ones responsible for the nest, taking care of the young. Males are responsible for hunting. And there's World Bird Sanctuary does a lot of really cool videos and like live cams where the male great horned owl brought back a rabbit or something for the babies and just kind of dropped it off in front of the babies, and babies like, what am I supposed to do with this? The female had to step in and tear it off into pieces. Interesting fact, their talons are like needle points, so when they grab onto whatever it is they want to eat, it doesn't really have a chance to get away from them. Their beak is their knife and fork, and so they'll rip and tear. And they actually have a specialized tongue and specialized serrations along the roof of their mouth, beak, that keeps the food going in one direction. So once they get it in there, it goes down. But it's he's not panting at me like he sometimes does, where I can actually kind of make a better point of it. But it's a yearly thing, and usually around this time of year, our female has she did lay eggs, none of which were fertile. We don't try and encourage that in our park because we don't have the proper licensing. And also we wouldn't want our birds trying to make more birds that aren't going to learn the necessary skills to be released in the future. So they gave her a basket with some colorful Easter eggs because I think somebody mistakenly took out one of the eggs and we weren't sure how she was going to respond. So they just kind of went in and tossed in one of those plastic Easter eggs, and she didn't really seem to care. The typical habitat, open fields, they have adapted to urban life, so you'll see them around here. I think I see more of these toward the Gulf side than I do in Tampa, because I think the red-tailed hawks are a little more predominant than the red shoulders, but they're all over the place, and they're found throughout the U.S., so they're not just restricted to here, but all the species that we have at the park are native to Florida, which is easier for us to maintain. The kestrel's habitat ranges more open fields. I know in St. Petersburg, if I go down to the Pinellas County Solid Waste, there are at least 4 or 5 kestrels that I've seen on a regular basis that hang out. So they prefer the open fields. That's their hunting ground. Whereas, I think around here, it's a little tougher. I know USF, like I said, I've seen them yelling at their reflections in the buildings, but also similar to the red tails are the Cooper's hawks, but they are a different family altogether. The red tails are in the buteo family, whereas the Cooper's hawks and the sharp-shinned hawks are in the accipiter, and they're a little more aerodynamically built. Their wings are a little more narrow, and they're a little more maneuverable. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time looking at bird pictures and looking at birds, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a red tail. All right, pardon me one sec, I'm going to switch out once more. Also, if you want to get pictures at the end of this, I'll be sticking around until the end of the night so we can get up close and personal. Try not to cut into my wonderful professors talking Texas or take over other smaller nests. Their distant cousin, the great horned owl, will actually battle eagles or ospreys for their nests. And great horned owls are kind of just big, powerful bullies. But the screech owl has some of the similar characteristics of the great horned. She's got her, your scientific word for the day, the plumicorns, which are the little horns that they have on top of their head. They use them to emote, to camouflage themselves. They're not actually used in any sense of the hearing. They have specialized feathers around their face, which occupy the area of the facial disc and their skull, which are the phyloplumes. They pick up vibrations from the air and channel them in. And you see the doggy. And they channel them into their skull so they can they can hear really, really well. And in corporation with that, their ears are offset where one ear is actually higher than the other. And the barn owl, I believe it is, can hear the heartbeat of a mouse a mile away under a foot of snow. So just about everything about the owl is specialized. Lucy is, she has the lighter color eyes. You'll notice that the barn owls, the barred owls, and several other species have the darker colored eyes, which means that they do most of their hunting in the darker hours of the night, whereas these guys are more twilight hours or crepuscular, if you will. And so they're waiting for the sun to go down, the roaches to start scurrying out, and hey, dinner. I do have some sheets over on the table there that you can either order them. I don't know if they actually have the specific dimensions of these screech owl boxes, but you can look online and do it yourself if you're interested in that. Which I think, hint, hint, wink, wink. Is there any reason why owls are poor nest builders? I'm still learning quite a bit. I know Liz introduced me as an expert, but every day is a learning experience. But I'm assuming that it probably has to do with the shape of their beak, where it's kind of short and compact close to the body. And that's possibly why. I don't think it has to do with the feet so much, because I know well, maybe it does. That's another thing to think about, because the woodpeckers have the zygodactyl feet, where their feet kind of look like X's. They can move the toes backward and forward, but I don't know if maybe it's food for thought. Can I answer any other questions? This is the smallest owl in the state of Florida, and she is one of the 4 smallest species in North America. So you're going to have the saw-whet owl, the pygmy owl, and the dwarf owl, which are smaller than these. The burrowing owl is about 2 inches taller than the screechy. And from there, you got, I think the biggest species by weight is the great horned, by size is the great gray owl. They are more Midwestern, northern. You'll find the eastern screech owls anywhere from the east to the Midwest. You have the western screech owl, which is very similar, but their song and their coloration is just a tiny bit different. Great horns are found all throughout, especially in Idaho when you're trying to sleep at midnight on the middle of a bed and breakfast on a windy day. Not that I know anything about that. The owls you'll find in Florida, you have the burrowing owls, which occupy golf courses, screech owls, and I just recently found out that I did some GPR with a group a couple weeks ago, and they're saying that they actually went through and did GPR over burrowing owl nests to see what it looked like. And I'd be kind of curious to learn more about that. I have to get back in touch with them. You have the barred owls, which are kind of a sort of a creamy grayish tan with a bar pattern on their feathers, and they're also known as the birds that sound like they're saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" And it's funny because one owl knows the entire song in our park, and the other one only knows the who all. And so she'll sit there on glove, just going, whoo, the whole time. You also have the great horns, and I know I'm missing a species. But I know in this area you have at least 4 distinct different species of owl. Just have to be able to know where to look for them because they camouflage very well. For the most of it, they are species of least concern. I think all the species that we have, I know for a long time with the falcons, the use of pesticides was a big concern, or Silent Spring, all the falcon nests were starting to disappear. And I think for a long time the kestrels were also threatened, but recently I haven't seen anything that would indicate that they're on the decline. So, and one thing I forgot to mention was you can generally tell the mood of an owl based on how fluffed up its feathers are. See that she notices little 4-legged creatures there, and she's got her feathers pulled in a little tight, and her plumicorns are down, and she's paying close attention to what's happening over there. But the barred owls will go for mostly mice, lizards, and think like frogs and toads. But mostly, I want to say mostly smaller mammals. Most of the birds of prey can only carry about 1/3 of their body weight. So it's generally anything smaller. So if you're worried about a hawk looking at your dog, chances are that hawk's not looking at your dog, it's looking at what the dog's stirring up. So the hawk's learned of, okay, hey, so that dog's going to run through the yard and here comes a bunch of mice. Easy pickings. The owls, not so much, since they're a little more... The lifespan of a screech owl ranges anywhere from 5 to 10 years in the wild, longer than that in captivity, since they're well taken care for. And Usually it seems the trend is with any bird in captivity will live at least 5 extra years than their quoted time in the wild. Supposedly the kestrels only go for about like anywhere from a year to 5 years in the wild, but it's just so varied. There's a story that there was a kestrel that had been banded that they'd seen for 11 years, but Lucy here is about a year old, if not year and a half, maybe going on 2. The kestrel is about she's over a year now because we got her before she was fully. I mean, she still had some of her adolescent plumage, but Lucy for sure we had when she was still adolescent, and so they'll have long lives with us, serving as our ambassadors or serving as ambassadors for their species. So I've also got a ton of information on the table over here where we're located, the different things that we provide. Also, if you're interested in the AVA program and whatnot. Yes, sir. The definition of a falconer, they capture the birds in the wild, and the birds are trained, not tamed, and they use them to hunt. To have a falconry license in the state of Florida, you have to go through, you start off as an apprentice, you become intermediate, and then you become a master. But you do have to hunt your bird, I think it's like 3 months out of the year. Yes, there's still falconers in Florida, and that's our program director is a master falconer himself, which is how we're able to get out and do this. Otherwise, it'd just be another bird exhibit with birds behind. With the falconry, they start off with either kestrels or red-tailed hawks, especially in this area because they're easier to work with. They're very quick to learn. Depending on location, Harris hawks are also a popular choice because they're super smart and they learn very quickly. And a lot of falconry shows you'll see most of the time they have a Harris hawk. And neat thing about the Harris hawk, they're one of the few social birds of prey where they stay together in colonies, if you will, and hunt together and take care of each other's nests and whatnot. Yep, the screech owl is often favorite food of the great horned owl. There is potential for hawks to go after the screech owls if they have the opportunity. Unfortunately, we have had an incident in our park about that, but that was well before I came there, before whatever. I think with most of the birds, they adaptation-wise, a lot of the birds have really picked it up pretty quickly. I know the screech owls have become quite comfortable in urban neighborhoods. Other species like just your typical songbirds and sparrows, there's the house sparrow, which they don't live in forests at all. They're strictly urban birds. I can't think of off the top of my head any species that I know that is really having a difficult time. It just, I think with more vehicles on the road, most of the birds that we have are either eye injuries or vehicle injuries or wing injuries rather, where they get hit by things, and yeah. Fortunately, we don't have many of the ones that have been poisoned. We do have 2 screech owls that have developmental defects because possible that the parents got a hold of an insect or something that had been tainted by poisons or whatnot. But for the most of it, it's people, oh hey, I want to make a pet out of that, and not realizing the consequences. Yeah, there is a hefty fine from Fish and Wildlife. They'll also take the bird away from you, and I think the next offense is an even bigger fine and possibly jail time. How far can they see? I know the hawks can see up to 10 times better than we can. I don't know off the top of my head how far the owls can see. I know that they have the better advantage because they're more sensitive to light. And the darker-eyed owls can use starlight to see where it is they want to go. These guys, more like dim light. But I think the owls have the advantage because they have both the seeing in darker conditions and also the incredible hearing, so they can triangulate where it is they want to be. Oh, all the birds of prey have eyes that they're tubular instead of spherical, so they are fixed in place. That's why she'll bobble her head. The kestrels especially, they kind of do a head bob thing. Kind of looks like they're nodding in agreement, which most of the time you can ask them questions. But it's so they can kind of sight what it is they're looking at. And also the owls have 270 degrees of rotation, so they can see what's behind them since they can't move their eyes like we can, where we've got spherical shape. And they can dilate their pupils on by their own control too. Putting up nesting boxes is a great idea to help protect them. If you see an injured bird, contact. I actually have information. I recently started as a transporter for Owl's Nest Rehab Sanctuary over in Odessa, if I'm not mistaken. And so if you can, like, call somebody, they'll come out, rescue the bird, they'll do everything they can. All of our birds come from rehab facilities, and we go through every extent that we can to make sure the bird can be released. And worst case scenario, they can't, but they're still alive and healthy, so that's why they end up at parks like ours. I believe also Boyd Hill does a similar thing to us. I don't know their exact details, but educating the public, making them aware that these animals exist. I know a lot of people kind of get in that mood of, oh, hey, yeah, well, I'm a human, so I don't have to worry about all that stuff. It's not my problem. But animals like the kestrel they'll take care of, they're really good for farmers because they'll take care of a lot of the pest control, take care of those pesky mice. And I don't know entirely what grasshoppers do, but I know they have some nasty habits. And so every bird serves a purpose. You've got your hawks and kestrels, which take care of the daytime shift. You got your screech owls and light-colored owls, and you've got your darker colored, or the great horns, the screechies, the other light-colored eyed owls will take care of like the twilight shift, and then you've got your birds at night, your darker colored eyed owls, and then take care of your late night rodents. So it kind of sucks to be a rat or mouse or vole. Our birds do share habitats with other species of other birds of the same species. So we have 9 screech owls altogether, 3 of which are imprints, but not as hard of imprint as Lucy here. So we tried putting her in with the other screech owls, but she doesn't get along with them because she doesn't know she's an owl. But they share a habitat. We've got the 3 red-shoulder hawks, 2 males and a female. They pretty much get along. Even with the whole nesting thing, that didn't actually be an issue. It didn't end up being an issue. We have the 2 barred owls which share, and we're currently working with our 2 female red-tailed hawks. And so far it's been good, but we just haven't had enough time to dedicate to getting them acclimated and getting on the same ground. So I mean, when they are in captivity, you can put them together, but it does take a bit of work depending on what their backstory is. With the red-tailed hawks, we have one that came to us when she was still fairly wild, and so she's been with us for about 5 or 6 months now, and she's still kind of getting used to the whole thing. Whereas the other red-tail has basically been with humans since she was about 8 or 9 months old, so she knows how to deal with humans, where the other ones are sort of like, eh. And it's kind of funny because when she's on glove with you, she kind of has this look of like, we have 21 birds on site. We have 2 vultures that we are currently working with off-site. So soon, once we get our enclosure built, we will also be bringing in our black vulture and a turkey vulture. And fun fact, the vultures are one of the smartest birds of prey. The turkey vulture has a wonderful sense of smell. They can smell things from miles and miles away. The black vulture is lazy and finds out that it can just follow the turkey vultures and get a free meal. Oh, imprinting is when the bird or the animal has not opened its eyes. And so when it does for the first time, whatever it sees is what it will acknowledge as its parent, its owner, its whatever. And so Lucy doesn't know she's an owl. So otherwise, she's perfectly healthy. She could be out there in the wild doing her thing, but unfortunately, she doesn't know how to do that. And so she's with us. She also serves as one of our receptionists. She's got a special perch at the park where she'll sit and she'll greet people as they walk into the nature center. And she makes a variety of sounds and motions. And sometimes she just has days where no, don't bother me, and just becomes a big puff and just goes to sleep. The imprinting goes for just about any animal, I think. But I think it's more noticeable with the birds, since when the bird's taken from a nest at such an early age that it doesn't learn the skills, where I believe they keep puppies and kittens stay with their mothers until a certain age before they should be until a certain age. So I'm not sure how long I've rambled for now, but hopefully it wasn't too bad.